Woman who flatlined for 27 minutes had an eerie message once she came back to life. It's sometimes difficult to remember just how precious life really is. Sometimes it takes a moment of danger to remind us just how special our lives are. But once that moment comes, we never come out the other side quite the same. One Arizona housewife was smack dab in the middle of an ordinary day when catastrophe struck. But when she finally came to, she imparted a strange message that her family would never forget. Tina Hines thought she had a perfect life, and few people could argue with her. She had a happy marriage of 30 years, kids who loved her, and a healthy routine each day. But Tina had no idea she was a few heartbeats away from losing it all. February 12, 2018 will always go down as the darkest day in the history of the Hines family. On that day, Tina and her husband Brian decided to take a leisurely hike just outside of Phoenix. The first leg provided everything they could have hoped for. Fresh air, sunshine, blood pumping through their veins. Their pleasant afternoon took a turn, however, when Brian heard a thud behind him. Whirling around, he saw his beloved Tina fall to the ground. She wasn't breathing. How could something like this happen to someone as wonderful and healthy as Tina? Brian called emergency services and prayed for a miracle. When a team of firefighters arrived at the scene, even they were spooked. The victim in question looked less than lively. They didn't hold out much hope, but still performed CPR on the drive over to the hospital. Unfortunately, they couldn't administer it fast enough. Before they could reach the emergency room, Tina's heart stopped. All signs of life were gone, but the firemen still had one more trick up their sleeves. Brandishing a defibrillator, one of them restarted Tina's heart. She came back, but only for a few minutes. When her heart stopped for a second time, they brought her back. Then, Tina flatlined for a third time. Tina was barely clinging to life when she entered the doors. Even the most seasoned doctors looked down at her in shock. The woman's heart stopped 2 more times. By the 5th resuscitation, she'd been dead for a total of 27 minutes. After another shock from the defibrillator, the medical staff expected Tina's heart rate to flatline yet again. Surprisingly, she remained stable, and when she came to hours later, the heart attack victim seemed incredibly serene. In her weakened state, Tina couldn't speak, but when she gestured for a nearby pen and paper, her loved ones realized she had something important to share. They placed the materials at her side. The Hines family watched in amazement as Tina scrawled out a message on the page. They could make out a couple of letters here and there, but they couldn't piece together what she meant. As Tina regained her strength, she told them what she was trying to write. "It's real," she explained. Puzzled, Brian asked what she was referring to. It was then that Tina described how she saw heaven. "It was so real, the colors were so vibrant," she recalled. While she flatlined, Tina told her family that she witnessed the afterlife in the most ideal sense. There were the pearly gates, the bright lights in the sky. Also, she wasn't alone. As Tina's vision became more clear, Jesus himself appeared in front of the heavenly gates. Shining brightly, he was a welcoming presence. When Tina woke up, she was more sure of her faith than ever. She knew in her heart, now beating strongly by the way, that it was nothing short of a miracle. The Hines family, coming so close to losing Tina, couldn't help but agree with her. Maddie Johnson, Tina's niece, felt particularly moved by the story. She came up with a permanent way to commemorate her family's incredible highs and lows. Inspired by this spiritual message from the hospital, Maddie had Tina's handwriting tattooed on her wrist. She explained that the ink has given me a tangibleness to an eternal hope that is not too far away. As elevated as she was to get a glimpse of heaven, Tina also wanted to thank the brave men who saved her. Smiles were all around when she and Brian stopped by the firehouse to show off her dramatic recovery. Naysayers claim that Tina only imagined the afterlife, but that doesn't bother her. This lucky wife and mother is simply glad to get a second chance at life. No matter if you're a devout believer or born skeptic, A brush with disaster will permanently change your outlook. Tina certainly isn't alone. Angela Hernandez lived in Oregon, but she missed her family down in Southern California. One week in July, she decided it would be nice to visit them. It was almost the last choice she ever made. It was a beautiful day when she set out from Portland in her white Jeep Patriot. Angela had only the hundreds and hundreds of miles of highway ahead to keep her company. It was a long drive, but at least the trip would offer some breathtaking views along the way. Angela could put her camera to good use. The most beautiful and dangerous part of the drive came when Angela passed through the Big Sur. The highway ran along the California coast with the Pacific Ocean only a cliffside away. Angela only remembered fragments of what happened next. The only thing that's clear was that a small animal darted out in the middle of the winding road. She swerved to avoid it. She lost consciousness as her car tore through the guardrail and plummeted 250 feet to the ocean below. It began to sink. Could anyone survive such a crash? When Angela awoke, water already filled up her vehicle up to her knees, and its level was rising. She grabbed a multi-tool she kept inside, smashed through the side window, and crawled out to the beach. Bloody and battered, she rolled over on the shore. She sustained injuries all over her body, and her shoes were missing. Her feet ached as she clambered up the rocks to escape the incoming tide and get some rest. Once Angela got her bearings, she saw that there was no way back up to the highway or even a clear path along the beach. She needed to signal for help, but first she had more pressing needs. Incredible thirst overtook her, so Angela rummaged through her washed-up car for supplies. She came across a black hose that had fallen out and figured it could be useful. She then found a mossy rock on the cliffside that dropped a bead of water every couple seconds. Angela attached one end of the hose to the rock and drank. Angela spent hours trying to flag down a car from the road above, but she was too far down and the cars were going too fast. Days passed by. Of course, police were searching for Angela after her family reported that she never showed up. But with so much ground to cover along the California coast, it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. The week after the crash, Chad and Chelsea Moore were hiking along the coast when they noticed something strange at the base of the cliff. It appeared to be a wrecked car. They found their way down to the beach to investigate. Chad and Chelsea were busy gathering items that must have come from the car when they heard a cry for help. They ran over to some nearby rocks where they found Angela. Though weak, she was still alive. Cell service wasn't great in the Big Sur, but Chad and Chelsea were fortunately able to reach emergency services. They stayed with her and did what they could until a medical team arrived. After first responders airlifted Angela to a nearby hospital, they worked to haul the debris up the cliff by crane. Although the first cable snapped, they managed to lift the Jeep back up. All told, Angela endured a brain hemorrhage, 4 broken ribs, a shattered collarbone, a collapsed lung, and ruptured blood vessels in both eyes. Lucky for her, she made a full recovery. Angela now feels like she has a new lease on life, and she's held on to various items from her car to remind herself how blessed she is. Not many other people would have survived the crash, let alone lasted on the beach for a week after. Angela says that the incident convinced her that there is indeed a bigger purpose in her life. She makes sure to savor every moment and spend as much time as possible with the ones she loves.